All right, good afternoon, and thank you very much, dear students, for joining me today. So today we are going to discuss about the the theory of uh, the Ronald Barthes mythologies. A to Z of theory of Ronald Barthes mythologies means that some basic idea about the Ronald Barthes mythologies and how actually myth has been created through different using different kinds of theories, especially that we have already discussed, that is semiotics, that how actually he exploited this idea of semiotics to understand this myth making process. Excuse me. Okay. Now, uh, just as a beginning, as a preface, if we really want to say that, as you can see, that human communication itself is multi-layered, and in one of our lectures actually I try to make you understand that what is communication and that how actually it works. So and it is multi-layered, and you can see that our language basically it relies on different sort of complicated systems of signification. For example, you utter a given statement using specific terminology, and it might indicate the ideological tendencies of yours. So you're using different kinds of specific statement, and when actually you provide with that statement, you use different kinds of terminologies. For example, if you're a philosopher, then you're using some kind of philosophies, different ideas from the philosophies. Or if you are, writing an advertisement, or if you're broadcasting an advertisement on any of the electronic media, there actually you're using some terminologies, some ideas that actually will, you can say, that will focus on the ideologies, the ideological tendencies or promise of the speaker. And also, like any other communication system, you can see even in the law, that is also multi-layered. So there is a good example about this thing, that even in law, the legal system, there actually you can find this play of these signification. You can see it very clearly there. Like, and I can see that these multi-layered system are creating meaning or signification system of legal practice or law. You can see it is, this multi-layered nature is born right at the moment of drafting or passing a judgment. So you are, for example, you're a judge or you are a lawyer. So you drafted a judgment, or you passed a judgment. But when you want to draft a judgment, when you want to pass a judgment, there actually you have to use some kind of symbols, some kind of signification. And then after passing this, or after passing or drafting this judgment, then you have to reconfigure that judgment. That means the audience or the people for whom that judgment has been passed, they have to reconfigure it through different kinds of interpretation, application, and even communication throughout the lifetime of the rule of the judgment. So when we get a judgment, it's not the judgment only for that time. That judgment can be a point of reference for different other judgment. So as a result, you can see that we will reconfigure the meaning of that judgment through, these different kinds of interpretation. So we'll interpret that law, that judgment or verdict, and then we'll have some application of it, and then even we will try to communicate it throughout our life. So we'll try to understand. So it's you can say it's a very continuous process. Now, there is an example. Suppose there is the rule that it forbids, that stealing is prohibited. So you cannot steal. You cannot steal somebody else's property. Then what does it mean that I cannot steal somebody's property even if I need it? Do you get the point what I'm saying? Even if I need it, I cannot steal somebody's property. That means I cannot take, or I cannot use somebody's property without their permission. Do you get it what I'm saying, dear students?
Yes, sir.
So this is very interesting, that I need it, but I don't have it. But somebody else, they have it, but you cannot steal it. So it proves, what does it prove? What is the signification from here? The thing is that, yes, go ahead if you want to say something, please. It shows that means there is some sort of sanctity of the property, right? Sanctity, purity, pavitra. That means my property is something which is very, very pure. It has some kind of sanctity. Without my permission, nobody else is allowed to use it. Got it? You understand it? When I say that stealing is prohibited, that means your
Yes, sir.
property is, I mean, pure, or your property is, I mean, it's what should I say? It's only for you. It's not for me. So I cannot use it without your permission. That is the, I mean, the other meaning. How actually we create this kind of extra kind of meaning with different kinds of judgment, with different kinds of ideas. So we're just giving some legal examples, so you'll find it easy to understand. Then again, you can see that how actually we have got this kind of sanctity, or in Bengali we say যে পবিত্রতার এই যে ধারণাটা কিভাবে যে আমার সম্পত্তিটা আমার কাছে পবিত্র আমানত. Okay, it's only mine. You cannot use it without my permission. Then how actually we have presumed this? You can see that this kind of sanctity actually, it was presumed at the moment of the drafting, and resumed further meaning and depth as the rule was implemented or transplanted or developed. Right? That means when we actually, in the form of the constitution, in the form of the legal statute, when actually we wrote it, that stealing is prohibited, nobody is allowed to take somebody else's property without their prior permission. So that's the rule, right? That's the rule. That's the legal, I mean, legally, that is the thing that actually we have to abide by. Do you get the point what I'm saying? We have written the rule. Hello, dear students, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
So when actually I have written that rule that is stealing is prohibited, then you can see the draft has been done. So now it's a rule. And then other people, for example, you, me, all of us, actually, we took this law and excuse me, and we resumed further meaning. We have attributed more meaning to this. And then we try to understand the depth of this rule. And this rule was later on, it was implemented in the society, in the legal world. It was implemented. Then it was transplanted. That means that rule from one place to another place, it has been transported there. Then other group of people or society, community, they are also following the same rule, right? And again, on the basis of this rule, we can also develop another rule. So you see, the basic rule, stealing is prohibited. You cannot steal somebody else's property without their permission. You cannot use them. So we took that rule, and then we established another kind of meaning of it. Then we took that rule and we implemented it in our personal life. That means we will not steal. If you steal, you will be punished. So that is the implementation of the rule. That means I'm not stealing anything. Then that rule is transplanted. That means it has been put in some other place, and then again it has been developed more. So this is the way actually you can see that how we are creating myth, we are creating ideas, ideologies from one to another. Now, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand it? I'm just giving you the very basic idea. We have lots of other stuff here, so don't worry. It's just an introduction of this, how this idea of myth actually works. And I try to give you some very simple examples from our day-to-day life, how actually in the legal world actually we have, you can see the very easy one. I mean, the easy example is there. So that's why I mentioned it. Okay, now can I move on?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, this is Ronald Barthes. This is his image. Okay, as in my last lecture, I told you that Ronald Barthes, or Barthes, in full, Ronald Barthes, actually, he was born in November 12, 1915 in France, and also he died in France, in Paris, in March 25th, or March 25. And he was a French essayist and social and literary critic whose writings on semiotics, the formal study of symbols and signs pioneered by Ferdinand de Saussure, helped establish structuralism and new criticism as leading intellectual movements. Barthes studied at the University of Paris, where he took a degree on classical letters in 1939, and in grammar and philology in 1943. After working at the Center National de la Recherche Scientifique, he was appointed, that means the Center of the National Research on Science or Scientific Research Center, National Scientific Research Center, you can say it if you translate it from French to English. It looks like this. He was appointed to the École Pratique de Haute Étude. It's in France. That means it's a school of practice. It's like that. So in 1976, he became the first person to hold the chair of literary semiology at the Collège de France. That means the College of France. He became the chair of the department, hold the chair of the department of that is called literary semiology. That means semiotics. So there actually he became the first chairman of that particular department in the College of France. It's about his books, so I'm not going to read all of this stuff, so you can read it yourself. Later on, I'm going to share these slides with you, so you can read it from there. Rather, I'm going to focus on here. Now, Barthes' literary style, because as actually we are going to study his one of his seminal works that is called Mythology. So, and we'll be reading some articles or some essays from there, some selected essays from there from that book that is called Mythology by Barthes. So Barthes' literary style, which was always stimulating through sometimes eccentric and needlessly obscure, was widely imitated and parodied. So you see, his style was sometimes it is called as very eccentric, weird, strange, and sometimes they're unnecessarily they're obscure. And that's actually, I mean, you can see there are lots of followers who also followed his writing style and they imitated his writing style. But there are also a group of people who also parodied. They also mocked at his writing. They mocked his writing. Okay. Do you get the point that I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, some thought his theories contained brilliant insights. Some people think that they have brilliant insights. That means they have brilliant significance or meaningful. It's like that. So brilliant insights, while others regarded them simply as perverse contrivances. They say that it's nothing but it's something perverse contrivances, different kinds of I mean rules or excuses or different kinds of ideas which are not that much necessary. They are not important. Okay, but by the late 1970s, Barthes' intellectual stature was virtually unchallenged, and his theories had become extremely influential not only in France but throughout Europe and in the United States. So you see now by the 1970s, you can see he became a person, such a person that he was unchallenged, virtually unchallenged. That means his intellectual stature, the height, it was so high that nobody could challenge him, and there was no one parallel to him. Okay, so he was matchless. He was regarded as matchless, and this is influence. It can be felt in France and also in the whole Europe, and therefore later on you can see that even in the United States, they were also influenced. I mean, in the academy, they're also influenced by Barthes' semiology or semiotics. Other leading radical French thinkers who influenced or were influenced by him included the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan, social historian Michel Foucault, and philosopher Jacques Derrida. So you see, he has inspired, I mean, all these great figures or all these great personalities of that time. I mean, you can see that's Jacques Lacan or Michel Foucault or Jacques Derrida. They're not some person who are not, I mean, that much easy to, I mean, you cannot ignore them, and they're very much influential, I mean, in the world of the philosophy and also in linguistics everywhere. So, okay, now let's move on to the next slide. All right, now two of Barthes' later books establish his late blooming reputation as a stylist and writer. So he wrote many books, but two of the later books, and these books actually, I mean, it established his reputation as a writer and as a, I mean, a stylist and writer in both ways. You can see he published an autobiography, and Ronald Barthes, that is his autobiography, and his fragments Francisco de Cosamo Amourier. I mean, it's very difficult to pronounce. I know very little French, so it's a little bit challenging. It needs lot more practice. I mean, if you really want to read and to get the meaning out of it. Anyway, so that's his book in French. An account of a painful love affair was so popular, it quickly sold more than 60,000 copies in France. So it's not a little thing. In those days, actually, the publication and also the advertisement, I mean, it was not like this. That when internet people will come to know about you, it's not that much easy. So 60,000 copies actually just sold, I mean, of those books at that time in 70s. Then Barthes died at the age of 64 from injuries suffered after being struck by an automobile. You see, actually, he succumbed to his death after an accident. And several posthumous collections of his writings have been published, including A Barthes Reader, edited by his friend and admirer Susan Sontag, and Incidents in 1987. It was published later on. Posthumous means after his death, these books were published. In his lifetime, actually, he didn't publish this. The later volume revealed Barthes' homosexuality, which he had not publicly acknowledged. And also you can see Barthes' work complete, I mean the complete works of Barthes were published in 3 volumes in 1993 to 1995. So that's, I mean, very briefly actually you can see, I mean, his contribution to this, I mean, to philosophy and also to linguistics, as you can see. Now, the most explicitly political aspects of Barthes' works is his mythology, or analysis of myths. That's actually what we are going to focus on here in this course. It's very important. Many of the myths he studies come from the fields of politics and journalism. So his myths, they come from politics and journalism. I shared the book, the PDF of the book with you, Ronald Barthes' Mythology. I hope you have that book, right? Dear students, do you have that book with you? The soft copy of the book, Mythology?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you see, it's basically it's from politics and from journalism. There actually he will show us through his essays that how myths are created. Okay, now Barthes' work on myths prefigures discourse analysis in media studies. So you see, it's discourse analysis in media studies. He is discussing the type of discourse which is particularly typical of right-wing populism and of the tabloid press. So he's going to discuss the discourse. I'll explain it later on. I mean, when we'll be discussing his text from that book, Mythology. So discussing the type of discourse which is particularly typical of right-wing populism. So you see, he wrote or he collected his ideas from politics and journalism, but it aligned with right-wing populism. We call it leftist, then we call right-wing. You know these phrases, right? Danpanthy, Bampanthi, in Bangla we say it, right? So he was
Yes, sir.
right-wing populism and of the tabloid press. It's a tabloid, you know it. I mean, it's a kind of it's a sort of newspaper, but actually they're published in a different time, in a different format. I mean, their shape and size of the newspaper is also different. So tabloid press. Now, the main purpose of his work in mythologies. So, what was the purpose of these mythologies? So, the main purpose of his work in mythologies is to dissect the functioning of certain insidious myths. So you see, functioning of certain insidious myths. That means they're very treacherous in their characteristics, in their traits, and sometimes it's pretty intriguing. And we are befooled by these kind of myths. We get, I mean, you feel like a fool. I mean, when you, if you do the anatomy of these texts from politics and journalism, there you can find that how actually it has created myths so surreptitiously and we people are deceived by it. Do you understand me what I'm saying?
Sir, can you please repeat the concept again?
The concept is that means he in his mythologies, I mean he collected his topics from politics and journalism, okay? And in these topics, like there is there is a chapter called toys. There are different others. So he actually showed in toys that how toys actually has created a myth for the kids. how actually we are using this. Like advertisement in itself is creating a myth, isn't it? And you see, we get convinced by these ads, and then we started buying those things. So those ads actually they are encouraging consumerism, right? Even though you don't need it, but actually you feel like buying those things, right?
Yes, sir.
So this is the thing. They're creating myth. Oh, this is fascinating. This is fabulous. If you don't have it, then you are nobody. For example, iPhone. The latest iPhone, if you don't have it, that means you are nowhere. You're not a part of this modern civilization. You must have a good laptop from a good brand. You must have a phone. And if it is an iPhone, then that means you are with the modern civilization. That means you are urban. You are one of the urbanites. If you don't have it, then you belong to somewhere else, but not in the city. It has created a myth. That means having an iPhone, it itself is a symbol of status, right? It's a symbol of your status, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Then how this myth actually it has been created? It has been created by the advertisements. It has been created by some kind of propagandist. We don't know actually how did it work. But if we explore it, then of course we can find it. And this is the thing where actually Ronald Barthes' theories of in these mythologies actually it will help us to understand these insidious characteristics of this kind of advertisement, of this myth making process. We can explore it. It can be divulged by this. Okay. So it takes an already constituted sign and turns it into a signifier. So myth is a second order semiotic system. You say that myth is a second order semiotic system. That means it's a semiotics, like the play of, the signifier, signified, and sign. So it's there, but the myth making is a second order. That means already we have these, this signification of different kinds of stuff in the society. But then when this signification, if you find that you need more than that to convince people, to deceive people, then you need this kind of myth making process. And according to Barthes, that is something which is very treacherous. It's very deceitful, প্রবঞ্চনাকর। এটার মধ্যে এক ধরনের বিশ্বাসঘাতকতা আছে, এটা এক ধরনের প্রতারণা আছে, এর মধ্যে এক ধরনের ছল চাতুরি আছে, tricks, full of tricks. Got it? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
And
sir.
okay, an interesting thing is that it takes an already constituted sign and turns into a signifier. So you see, already in the society you have this signification, this signifier and signifier. Then again, we are creating something new using the existing ideas, existing signs, and we are giving it a new meaning. That's why it's the second order semiotic system, because we are playing with the existing semiotic system and then we are creating something new. We are trying to create a myth. Barthes' example is a magazine cover which shows a black soldier saluting the French flag. Now, at the level of first order language, this picture is a signifier, an image, which denotes an event, a soldier saluting a flag. But at the second order mythological level, it signifies something else. The idea of France as a great multi-ethnic empire, the combination of Frenchness and militariness. I don't know whether actually have any idea about the French, French imperialism. You know, the French actually, they extended their empire, I mean, to the African nations, different African nations like Democratic Republic of Congo. And there are many like Ivory Coast, something. These are the countries actually; those were colonized by the French Empire, and French Empire actually, literally, they exploited these countries. They exploited them. I mean, money-wise, they exploited them. You can say wealth-wise, and also, I mean, you can say the natural resources. They exploited everything, and because of this, these French empire at that time, actually, when they colonized these countries, then you can also find this, that problem also in some other parts of the African nations like Tunisia and Morocco. You can see they have Africa. These French actually they colonized them, and you can see that their language is French, Arabic and French. They have the similar status in Morocco and also in Tunisia. And what did they do? They brought many black people as slaves to these, to France, so that they can use them as slaves.
Sir,
Yes.
the French also colonized India, Pondicherry.
Yeah, years back, many years back. And also you can see the Portuguese, they also colonized Goa, that part of India. You know that?
Yes, sir. Goa, Pondicherry, these parts of India.
Okay. Anyway, so you can see that when a black soldier, on a cover of a magazine, you can see there is a cover of a magazine, XYZ, that's the name of the magazine. And on the cover, you can see a black soldier, he is saluting the French flag. Okay. So what does it mean? It's a soldier, he is showing respect to the French flag. But French actually, the black people, they were not the real, French in that sense, because they were brought as slaves from different African nations. Okay. Now this man, he has become a part of the French society. Now he has become a soldier. Now he is saluting. So what does it signify? At very surface level, there is no problem with that. But when you go beneath the surface, then there lies the problem. And what is that problem? Which denotes an event. Okay, the picture signifier, it's just an image and it denotes an event. Maybe there is an event like National Day of France, something like that, and they're saluting the national flag. There is no problem with that. But if you go deep down that image, and if you try to dissect it, if you try to analyze it, or if you do the anatomy, then you can understand that the second order mythological level is there, but it signifies something else. The thing that you can see on the cover of the magazine, that's not the real picture. Beneath that, there is a message. And this message, actually, you see the French government, French people, or the French politics, they try to establish that the French is a multi-ethnic empire. That means they're black and white. They can coexist side by side. There is no exploitation. There is no slavery. There is nothing. We are good. And you can see the French flag and the soldier, it's a symbol of the militariness, and French flag is a symbol of the Frenchness. Do you get the point? A soldier is saluting Bangladeshi flag. That means the flag itself is the Bangladesh. That is the Bangladeshiness, you can say in that sense. And the soldier, he symbolizes the militariness of Bangladesh. Similarly, the Frenchness and the militariness, and you can see the multi-ethnic society empire. That means no problem. We all of our actually we are coexisting very peacefully. So they are trying to portray that kind of image. That is the second order mythological level. How myth is created just through a single image, single cover page of a magazine. This is an example. Hello.
Yes, sir.
So I hope you understand what I'm discussing, right? Tanzir, do you have any problem, Tanzir?
No, sir.
It's okay. All right. Now let's move on to the next slide. Seriously, myth is a meta language. It turns language into a means to speak about itself. However, it does this in a repressive way, concealing the construction of science. The system of myths tends to reduce the raw material of signifying objects to similarity. For instance, it uses a photograph and a book in exactly the same way. So this is very interesting phenomenon, and you must understand it. You must embrace it. Otherwise, actually, how this meets and how in our society there are different kinds of ideas are created. Actually, in a way of myth. If you just, keep your eyes open, you can see lots of things are going on in the politics. Lots of things are going on in our society, in our culture, in our tradition, on television, on different internet platforms. So you can find it every day. That's why he says that myth is a meta language. Do you understand what does it mean by this meta language? Anyone? Anyone? Can you tell me what does it mean, meta language? Hello? What is meta language? Can you tell me? It's a kind of form of language, or you can say a set of terms or terminologies or symbols, and these symbols or these terminologies, these terms are used for the description or analysis or interpretation of another language. That means that the cover, that means a black soldier is saluting the French flag. That's simple the cover. But beneath that, there are other meaning, right?
Yes, sir.
That is metalanguage. That metalanguage means that talks about the language itself, but it is not given. On the surface level, actually, you will not find it. But if you try to deconstruct, then you will find that there is a structure beneath the structure. There is symbol beneath the symbol. I mean, the surface, there is a symbol on the surface, and beneath that, you can find another language. You will find another symbol. So metalanguage actually it is the language about the language. That is metalanguage, you can see. That means using different kinds of forms and terms to understand the language, to interpret or to analyze the language. And those things are not there. It's not visible or tangible in that sense, I mean, on the surface level. As I have already given you that example, that cover page, if it is the language, then beneath that, there are other significance. That is the metalanguage. What it tends to say. Actually, what does it mean beyond that we can see? Okay? And you can see it turns the language into a means to speak about itself. That means this myth-making process, this myth, actually, it will turn the language into a means to speak about itself. That means it will talk about that particular language. That means the French language, beneath that, there is another French language, another meaning, another signification. That is the meta-language. That means that language is talking about the French language, or the language itself. So language is talking about itself. That is the work of the myth. However, it does this in a repressive way. Repressive means that means there is kind of repression, there is kind of hide and seek. You have to conceal something. So the image, the image that I already, we have already imagined, the French soldiers saluting the French flag, there actually you can see that some other meaning, it has been concealed, right? Other symbols are concealed. Beneath that, that image on the cover page of the magazine, considering the construction of signs. And we couldn't, primarily you cannot understand if there is wrong with that. But if you analyze it, then you can find that what kind of tricks actually has been played on you so that you got deceived. So you took it just as a, as a cover page, but it didn't go beyond the cover page. The system of myths tends to reduce the raw material of signifying objects to similarity. So you see, tends to reduce the raw material. So it will take the raw material, that's, you can see the language, the raw material of the signifying objects to similarity. So you see, it will use a similar thing. So you will understand, you will find your reference and you can understand it very easily. You'll find it very similar objects out there, like soldiers saluting a French flag. But you can see the system of myths tends to reduce the raw material of signifying objects to similarity. So you'll find it very known, very similar, but actually it's not similar. There is difference, and you have to find it out through the anatomy, through discourse analysis. For instance, it uses a photograph and a book in exactly the same way. So a photograph and a book are the same in reality? Tell me. A photograph and a book are the similar?
No, sir.
What's the difference between these two? What's the difference? There's a difference is format, right? The difference is in format. Photograph is just an image. It's a picture. But a book actually is full of words, sentences, different kinds of structures. Okay?
Yes,
so their shape and size and also the medium is different. One is through words, another one is through image, right?
yes,
But
sir.
the myth making process, it will use both the photograph and the book in the same way. That is the thing. In the book, actually, you will use, you can write many things and people will read it and they will understand it. They will feel motivated or they will find out the philosophy in it. And the photograph, actually, it doesn't have that luxury to use words. So as a result, the photograph, through its construct, through its image, it will create the myth in the same way the book will create them. So the book and the photograph, they have the same kind of significance. Understood? Now, is it okay? How actually it has, the objects are, raw materials are actually, they have been used, I mean, the signifying objects to similarity. Understood now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, myths differ from other kinds of signifiers. For one thing, they are never arbitrary. They always contain some kind of analogy which motivates them. So these myths, since actually you are using them very intentionally and consciously, you're creating them. So other kind of signifiers and these myths, they're different. For example, if I say this is a tree, from the very beginning, if people, if they had recognized tree as cat and cat as tree, so we would have learned in the same way, right? Do you get the point? Now,
Yes,
tree means we understand they're full of green leaves and there is a specific structure. So, and it bears fruit, it bears flowers, right? That is tree. But if we say that tree is not tree, that is cat, and cat is the tree, I mean, since the inception of the civilization, if we would have learned it in that way, then today we would have recognized tree as the cat and cat as the tree. Am I right or wrong? Do you get the point that I'm saying?
yes, sir.
So there is some sort of arbitrariness. We are saying,
Yes.
okay, this is tree, tree, done. This one is cat, cat. This one is dog, this one is cow, done. Why don't you say that the cat is the cow and cow is the cat? Because both of them, they have 4 legs, 1 tail, 2 ears and 2 eyes. So we can, use these names interchangeably, but we are not using it. We say that this is cow and this is cat. That is the arbitrariness. But in the myth making process, you don't do that kind of thing because it's pretty intentional. You do it very intentionally. You devise to deceive or to beguile the people, to befool the people, or to convey different sort of meaning. That's why you're using the raw materials, the known raw materials, and then you are turning it into something different. But it looks like that they're similar, but when you go for the anatomy or when you dissect it, when you try to analyze it, then you find something different. The meaning is different. And that is not arbitrary. Very much willingly it has been created. জেনে বুঝে এই অর্থ তৈরি করা হয়, এর মধ্যে arbitrariness নেই. Done? Okay?
Yes, sir.
So they always contain
Sure.
some kind of analogy which motivates them. So some kind of analogy. So they always contain analogy with the world, with the real world. So in contrast to ideas of false consciousness, myths do not hide anything. So in contrast to the ideas of false consciousness, so false consciousness, for example, if your consciousness is false, if it is not real, if your ideas are not real, then myths don't hide anything. So it will not be able to hide it. So instead of doing that, what do you do? Myths inflect or distort particular images or signs to carry a particular meaning. If everything, if the false, if your ideas are conveyed in a very simple manner, and if people can understand that myths, then that is not a myth at all. Do you understand what I'm saying? There must be a kind of deceitfulness. There must be some kind of tricks in the creation of the myths. So myths, if myths cannot hide it, then it's not a myth at all. It's not, in that sense, you cannot call it a myth. Instead, myths inflect or distort particular images. So I will create a cover page on a news on a magazine, and as a designer or as a graphics designer, I will try to create a new meaning with that kind of cover page. And then in doing so, I will try to distort the particular image, particular idea, so that it can carry a different meaning, a particular meaning. But it will not be understood by the people, at a first glance. You cannot understand it. You have to invest your theoretical knowledge. You have to invest your academic knowledge, your intellectuality to understand the meaning beyond the meaning, to understand the meta language of that particular image or the particular work. Myth doesn't hide things, it distorts them. It alienates the history of the science. So you see, myth doesn't hide things. You can see the thing, but myth will distort the thing, the signification. It will distort the signification. It will create a new kind of signification. So it doesn't hide, rather it distorts. Okay? Think of an advertisement. Some of the stuff, they're pretty expensive. For example, iPhone. I mean, usually middle class people from our country, actually, they will not be able to buy, right? But at the same time, you can find there are other different kinds of brands, and the way actually they propagate their ideas about that particular brand on television or on different other online platforms in such a way that even the middle class people, they can afford it. So through this, actually, they're creating two different kinds of myths. One is for the upper class, another one is for the middle class. Dear students, do you get the point?
Yes, sir.
So here you see, the myth is very clear. It didn't hide anything. That, okay, these sort of phones, these are for the middle class, they can buy it because they're affordable. It's within their reach financially, actually within their reach, so they can buy it. But iPhone actually is not for the poor people, it's for the upper class, it's for the rich people. The rich segment, or you can say the rich section of the society, actually, they can buy. The rich pocket of the society, they can buy. So you see, the poor and rich, even in your, in your buying capacity of the commodities, that will also determine that which part of the society actually you personally actually you belong to. And this is the way actually how we create myth about particular product. Hello? Hello? Dear students,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So you see, it's alienate. That means it's differentiate, or you can say it causes a kind of separation. The history of the sign. So you know one sign as one way, but it will create a myth, and through this actually it will create another meaning. So it's a kind of separation of the history of the sign. So creating some kind of, it is new thing, new ideas. So it doesn't hide, rather it distorts. Okay. Now, Barthes' main objection to myth. Now, here comes the thing. Now, we have come to know that how myth works. How does it work? Okay, its mechanism, its techniques that actually very briefly we have come to know about. Now, here we will see that how Barthes, actually he is trying to explore this idea. So Barthes' main objection to myth is that it removes history from language. It removes history from language. So you see the history and the language, so they will be separated. So that by the known history, you'll not be able to identify the language because already the myth has been created. It has distorted the history of the signs. It makes particular signs appear natural, eternal, absolute, or frozen. It thus transforms history into nature. Its function is to freeze an arrest language. It usually does this by reducing a complex phenomenon to a few traits which are taken as definitive. Barthes uses the example of Basque chalet in Paris, which ostentatiously displays certain signs of what is taken as Basque style, minus other aspects of Basque houses as they would be found in the countryside. It has a sloping roof, but not a burn. Now, this is very interesting. Now, he's talking about a some kind of architecture, some kind of design of the house. And he's saying that I can also give you this same example from our life. Now, if you just go to the Gulshan and Bonani, those rich part of the city, in Dhaka, there actually you can see all the rich people. They have duplex, they have high-rise buildings. All these buildings are very modern. Full of different kinds of equipments, and technologically they're very different, right? But if you go to the poor, section of the city, they're actually fine. Comparatively, and if you say that they're poor. So if you go to those places, you can find that the structure of the buildings and the way people live, and that is different from the rich part of the city. Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Do you get the point that I'm saying? If you have any confusion, please ask me. You can ask me a question anytime. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Any confusion, Tanzi? Is
No,
it
sir.
okay?
Okay, sir.
So the rich part of the society or the city and the poor part of the city. So you can see the design or the, the difference in the architecture of the buildings. It's very much visible. Okay. So here it says that the Basque houses, it's a certain kind of pattern of the houses, is as they would find in the countryside. So the Basque houses found in the countryside, that means in the village areas or in the rural areas, they're different than the Basque style found in the city areas. They're very ostentatiously, they display certain signs. And it shows that, okay, this is the people, these are the buildings or these are the houses owned by the rich people. Oh, these are the houses owned by the middle class people, because we can see the, you can see the architectural difference between these two. For example, you can see that in the city side, you don't find any burn. Do you find any burn? Burn মানে বুঝতে পারছো তো, গোলা, যেখানে ধান টান কোনো কিছু রাখা হয়, শহরের বাড়িতে থাকে?
No, sir.
না স্যার।
কিন্তু গ্রাম এলাকায় গেলে আমরা দেখতে পাই. So the difference is very pretty visible, but it is creating a different kinds of myth that what kind of people in which part of the society, which part of the country, which part of the geographical, it's a location, you can say. So now again, I'm reading it, that Barthes' main objection to myth is that it removes history from language. So the history and language actually, it creates a kind of separation. That means the language is separated from history. That means a known history, you'll not understand it, and you will not be able to identify with your known language. It makes particular signs appear natural, some kind of signs. For example, some kind of, for example, you can say, oh, this kind of mud house or hut. Oh, it's very common in the slang. Yes. আমরা ধরেই নিয়েছি যে বস্তি এলাকাতে হাট বা ওই কি বলে ওগুলাকে, কুড়ে ঘর, টিনের ঘর থাকবে, ধরেই নিয়েছি, right? It's very natural, it's eternal, it's absolute, it's frozen, it's very common. এই যে মিথটা আমরা ক্রিয়েট করেছি যে গরিব মানুষ মানেই হচ্ছে ওই জাতীয় বাড়িতে থাকে, it does transform history into nature. So history becomes the way in nature. It is এটাই এরকম, এটাই স্বাভাবিক, এটা তৈরি করে ফেলা. Its function is to freeze or arrest language. So it actually works on the language. It freezes the language, it arrests the language. যে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজকে অবশ করে ফেলে, সেটাকে ধরাশায়ী করে ফেলে. বুঝতে পারছো? মিথসের কাজটা কি? সে ভাষার খেলার মাধ্যমে মানুষকে সে অন্য জিনিস বোঝানোর চেষ্টা করে. বুঝতে পারছো?
Yes, sir.
If I give you a very solid example without mentioning any name of any political parties, you can see that in our country what we can see. Even in USA, even in England, you can see the particular parties actually they have particular traits, and these traits for a long time actually these traits have been created through kind of myth making process. For example, one particular party, if they're in power, some people they will say that, okay, if this party goes to the power, then these things will happen and you will lose your sovereignty. But when that particular party, if it comes to the power, then we can see that actually it is not true. That party simply, it didn't do that kind of thing, that before the election we heard about it, okay, this party is this, and that myth is very much prevalent in the society. People believed in it. But right after the election, when that particular party is in power, we can just see just the opposite. But we are scared before that if that party goes to the power, they might create a chaos. But when they went to the power, we can see that actually it was completely a construct, or that kind of myth was constructed by the opposition parties. In reality, that party, they don't have that trace, they don't have that intention to do that. Now you understand it, how actually transform the history into nature, and people feel it that that's the natural thing, it will happen.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it usually does this by reducing a complex phenomenon to a few traits which are taken as definite. So there is a phenomenon, it's very complex, that political phenomenon is very complex, but it will take some few characters and then it will make it definite that this will happen, this is this. So these are the traits, these traits belong to that particular party, these are the traits, these traits belong to that particular party, and it has become very much definitive. And we believe in those things, we trust those things. Barthes uses the example of Bach's challenge that I've already mentioned, that the design of the house, actually, how it can make the difference, the city area and the rural area. Now, it is crucial to emphasize that Barthes is not saying that all language uses myth. Yes, he's not saying that all the time we're using language and we are creating myth. It's not like that. He doesn't believe that myth is necessary. His social constructivism is also partial. So he doesn't say that myth is necessary all the time. Actually, you have to create myth to to sustain, or to survive. It's not like that. So his social constructivism is also partial. He believes there are things with specific attributes separate from their mythical constructions, accessible perhaps through denotative language. So we know connotative meaning and the denotative meaning of the language. Denotative is the dictionary meaning or the specific meaning about something. There is nothing other than that. That is at the surface level, that what you can see, that is the denotative meaning. But the connotative meaning is more than that. It's not denotative. It is not the dictionary meaning. It's more than that. Like symbolically, it can mean something. Its signification, it can mean something. That is the connotative meaning. So he believes that there are things with their specific attributes separate from the mythical constructions. So you can see that there are things, there are some signs, there are some particular, attributes of things are there with a specific attributes. They have a specific, you can see in Bengali, we call it gunabali, qualities, and they're separate from their mythical constructions. So the mythical constructions from there, they're different, because he's saying that not all the time actually we are using language to create. So that's what he's saying this in this way. But a semiotician can only study the signs or myths, not the things. So you can study the sign, you can study the myths. For example, through cat, what kind of myth has been created, you can study that. But you cannot say, but the semiotician actually, he will not study the things itself. The cat itself is not the, it's not his, you can say, the focus of research. His focus is the language, the myth creation process, the sign, the signification. That is the main focus of the semiotician, not the cat itself, not the animal itself. Understood? তিনি বিড়াল নিয়ে কাজ করবেন, বিড়াল কোন ধরনের মিথ ক্রিয়েট করছে, কি সায়েন্স সিগনিফিকেশন হচ্ছে, কিন্তু বিড়াল প্রাণী হিসেবে তার কাজ না। এটা হচ্ছে ভেটের কাজ। যে পশু বিজ্ঞানী আছেন বা পশু ডাক্তার আছেন বা পশু নিয়ে যারা কাজ করে, সেই এর পশু নিয়ে কাজ করবেন। উনি পশুর ওটা নিয়ে ভাবেন না, উনি ভাবেন যে ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজটা নিয়ে কিভাবে কাজ করছে। সো the thing, the object itself is not his, it's not his, his focus. His focus is on the science, the myths itself. According to Barthes, he can tell us about the myth of the goodness of wine, or the way wine is signified as an essence it doesn't really have. Wine may, in fact, for contingent reasons of sense experience, be good, but a Semitic can tell us this. So actually, he has a chapter. There is like, I forgot the name. The wine is there, and the other part is like meat and wine, something like that. We'll read it, no problem. So he's saying that the wine itself, the thing, actually is not important. The thing is that the sense experience, or the after taking the wine, or the wine, what does it signify? What does it mean? More than the thing itself. মদ বস্তু হিসেবে, ওয়াইন বস্তু হিসেবে কি সেটা না, এটা আসলে অর্থের দিক থেকে সে কি তারতম্য ক্রিয়েট করে, কি সিগনিফিকেন্স তৈরি করে, সেটা হচ্ছে দেখবার বিষয়। ওয়াইন বস্তু হিসেবে it doesn't matter. What matters, that's the signification, the science. In a sense, therefore, there is a negative approach to myth. It breaks down rather than replacing. So myth actually, it breaks down the language, and it breaks it down rather than replace. It doesn't replace. That means we're not using one meaning instead of another meaning. We are not using one significance instead of another significance. Rather, we are breaking it down and creating a new meaning, One might speculate that eventually language would need to be constructed in a non-mythical way. So they say that language, it's need to be constructed in a non-mythical way. That means there is no myth in it. In order to move beyond myth, perhaps by talking directly of situated experiences rather than essences. So rather than you talk about your experience. How did you feel after taking that particular star? What was your feeling about that thing? So what was your experience? So experience matters, not the essence, not the thing itself. So, and also need to be reconstructed in a non-mythical way. So if you really want to understand the language, or one might speculate that eventually language would need to be reconstructed in a non-mythical. So don't create myth. Just think about the experience and then keep talking about, keep talking about it. Okay, in order to move beyond myth. If you really want to move beyond myth, beyond this kind of extraordinary meaning making process, if you want to go beyond it, then just go beyond it if you really want to understand the language. Perhaps by talking directly of situated experiences. So you talk about the experience directly. Don't think about anything else other than the senses. But this is outside the scope of Barthes' project. So the Barthes, but he's saying that it's not my project. My project is more than that. And what is that? Now he's saying crucially, myths remove any role for the reader in constructing meanings. Remember this line. What does it say? Myths remove any role for the reader in constructing meanings. Do you get it, dear students? Hello? Tanjir,
Yes, sir.
do you get the point? What I'm saying here? Look at the line, it's very important. Myths remove any role for the reader in constructing myths. For example, you are the reader, okay? You are reading a text. As a reader, you will not have any role to play. Already the myth has been created and you have to get that meaning. Understood? So in the making of the meaning, as a reader, you don't have any responsibility. You don't have any role to play. The myth is already there. The meaning has already been constructed. Just try to get there. Got it, Tanjir?
Got it, sir.
Okay. Now, myths are received rather than rather than read. That means you are not reading it. You have already received the myth. You're not reading the myth. The myth is there beneath the text. And you don't have to create it. It has already been created there. Already, it exists there. A message which is received rather than read doesn't require an interpretation through a code. So already you have got the message and you don't have to interpret it through a code. You don't have to use any code because myth is there already. It only requires a certain cultural knowledge, which is very interesting. If you really want to understand that myth, you have to have a cultural knowledge, certain cultural knowledge. Then you will be able to explain, you'll be able to grab the meaning of that particular myth. One might add that it also needs a certain form of life corresponding to the resonance of this knowledge. A certain form of life corresponding to the resonance of this knowledge. Now let me explain the first part of it. That means myth removes any role for the reader in constructing meanings. That means I'm a reader, I'm reading a text, I don't have any responsibility anymore. I cannot construct the meaning because meaning has already been created, myth is already there. I'm just a receiver. So I just received the message and then I read it. That's it. And I don't read any interpretation through a code. I don't have to, but I must have a certain cultural knowledge. For example, an image has been created or a cover page has been created. And you see, it's from the Bangladeshi context. So if you really want to get the myth, or if you really want to understand the metalanguage, that is language beyond the language, if you really want to understand this, then you must know the Bangladeshi culture, tradition, right? Because it's based on Bangladeshi culture. Akash, do you get it?
Yes, sir.
As I've already explained it, since I have a little bit of knowledge about the French colonialism, that's why actually I could understand that cover page of the magazine. That means a black soldier saluting the French flag. If you don't, if I didn't have that kind of cultural knowledge, the background about the French exploitation or their colonization, or how they expanded their empire, even to the, to the Africa, to the farthest of the African nations, African countries. So if I didn't have, the slightest idea about it, then I wouldn't be able to understand that cover magazine, that the myth that has been created by that image on the cover of the magazine. So certain cultural knowledge is important. So if you really want to understand the cover page or the image or the writing of by the Bangladeshi writers, then you must have some cultural background, cultural knowledge of that particular society or particular country, so that you will be able to explore it. You'll be able to understand or interpret that particular myth. Okay. Now, the consumer of myth must here be differentiated from others who actually do read myths. The consumer of myth must here be differentiated from others who actually do read myths. So you see, some people, like for example, now we have become some kind of expert in it, and you know how actually it works. You know a little bit of semiotics. So now you'll be able to understand it. So the consumer of myth must here be differentiated from others. So you see, the consumer of the myth or myths that have been created by this sort of image or the books. For example, now I know it. I know the culture. I have the culture background, culture knowledge. So the way actually I'll be able to understand it. A person actually who doesn't have that kind of cultural knowledge will not be able to understand it in a similar fashion. To the semiotician, like Barthes, a myth is just an alibi, a way of covering up the lack of ground which essences really have. Covering up the lack of ground which essences really have. Alibi means, for example, it's a kind of cover up. It's a kind of cover up. So you lack something and you cannot express it directly. So you're creating a kind of myth, and beneath that myth, there's some kind of signification, some kind of meaning creating processes there, and you try to understand. To a producer, okay, now, all right, so as I was saying that to the semiotician like Barthes, a myth is just an alibi, a way of covering up the lack of ground which essences really have. So it's just hiding something, so or using some kind of covering up instead of another. So to a producer of myths, such as a newspaper editor, choosing a cover photo, they're simply examples of symbols, consciously so chosen. So you can see, for example, if you're an editor of a newspaper, so when you choose a particular photo or a cover photo or different kinds of photographs, so you see, they are the examples or symbols consciously chosen. So you chose them very consciously. That, for example, there is a report, and then there are several photographs. Then you will choose that photograph, which will actually create some kind of signification, some kind of meaning, or that will add some kind of meaning to the existing report, right? So that report will be more, it will emphasize on particular idea, concept. Without image or without photograph or without photo, the report, actually, if you read it, and then when you see the photograph or image along with the report itself, then you can establish the meaning more accurately. But it's a kind of myth making process, because very consciously the editor actually, he or she has chosen that particular photos so that people will get a kind of meaning out of it. So in either case, the myth is not received as such. Both the journalist and the semiotician knows very well that the myth is constructed. So the journalists also know that the myth is constructed, and the semiotician, like Ronald Barthes, they also know that that myth or that idea, that meaning, it has been constructed very much willingly, knowingly. That myth is constructed. So this is the way that myth, construction of myth, in most cases, it's a conscious process. Now, according to the Barthes, someone who consumes a myth, such as most tabloid readers, doesn't see its construction as a myth. They see the image simply as the presence of the essence it signifies. So they don't understand the myth. They just see that, oh, it's an image and it's an essence. It's a part of the news, part of the tablet. The tablet. For instance, they see in the saluting black soldiers the presence of French imperiality. They see that it's a French imperialism. The black soldiers saluting the French flag, it's just part of the French imperialism. Okay, they are then convinced that what they have seen is a fact, a reality, even an experience. So they think that this is the reality, there's the French imperialism is there. That's the reality, that's the fact, that's the experience that we have to embrace it, as if they had actually lived it. And they think that, okay, it's part of the, part of it, the French imperialism. For example, now these days, when you see that the Palestinians in Israel, when their lands are grabbed or occupied by the Israeli forces, then we have taken it for granted that today or tomorrow, there will be no country called Palestine, right? Because all the lands will be occupied by the Israeli government or the Israeli occupation force, right? And they say the myth has been created, and we know that we don't have anything to do with that. People are getting killed in Gaza or in West Bank, in Jerusalem, I mean in Palestine, in different parts of Palestine, and we have taken it something which is, that is the reality, and actually we're living in that kind of reality. So it is this kind of reader who reveals the ideological function. Now, the reader, they're convinced that their imperialism is there, French imperialism is there. They read it and then try to understand the ideological function of it. So this sort of experience that we're living in, we will try to explore the ideological function of the myth out of it. Now, myths are not read as statements of particular actors, but as outgrowths of nature. So somebody, for example, I'm an actor. That means I'm an agent. I did something. I created a kind of image, or I'm doing something. So see, me, actually, it's not read as a statement of an actor like me, because I created the me, but it outgrowths of the nature. We think that it has grown naturally. It was unavoidable. It was to be there. Okay, so it has become the part of the nature. They're seen as providing a nature reason rather than an explanation or a motivated statement. They are read as innocent speech from which ideology and signification are absent. So every day, actually, we're reading everything and we say, oh, it's just a speech. So we don't go for the ideological construct there. I mean, what kind of ideology actually it is going to disseminate, or what kind of signification actually it's going to give us. And we find this ideology and signification, they're absent from there. To consume a myth is not to consume science. It's not to consume science, but images, goals, and meanings. So when you consume, so you say I'm a consumer. And as a consumer, what I do, I consume this myth. I embrace these myths. But I'm in the process of that. I mean, in consuming this myth, actually, is not to consume the science. Rather, what I'm doing, I'm consuming the images, goals, and meanings. So here, science are not important. That means the signifier or signifier. The important thing is that what kind of images you're getting from that, what kind of experience actually you're getting from that, what kind of meaning actually you're getting from that, what is the goal of this kind of advertisement, this kind of photograph, this kind of image, what's the meaning of it, what's the goal of it. The signified of the connotative myths is hidden, since it cannot be reconstructed through the language or images used to carry it. So you say the signified of the connotative myths is hidden. I've already mentioned it. The meaning is there hidden. We only get the surface, since it can't be reconstructed through the language or images used to carry. The utterance is structured enough to affect the reader, but this reception doesn't amount to a reading. So you see the utterance that you are uttering, you are structuring some kind of ideas, and it is enough to affect the reader. That will affect the reader. The utterance will affect the reader. But this reception doesn't amount to a reading. So the things that I have already received it out of it, actually, that will not amount to reading. It's not a reading, but the utterance, that thing actually you have got it from there, that will affect you. Now, according to this reading of myth, a myth occurs only if someone is a true believer who consumes the myth innocently. If you're a true believer in it, and if you believe it truly, then you will consume the myth very much innocently, without knowing anything. তুমি একেবারে খুব সাধারণ একজন মানুষের মতো নিষ্পাপভাবে তুমি জিনিসটা মিথ্যা তুমি অ্যাকসেপ্ট করে যাবে, কোনো রকম সন্দেহ করছো না, কারণ তুমি বিশ্বাস করে ফেলছো। This is why for certain later writers, a postmodern ionic reading, which recognizes and plays with the constructiveness of myths, is deemed subversive. But the postmodern ionic reading, I mean, they try to explore the meaning beneath the meaning. They recognizes and plays. I mean, which recognize, I mean, this kind of reading recognizes and plays with the constructedness of myths. So you can find that how this this construction of myths or this process of constructedness of myths, এই যে মিথ তৈরির এই যে প্রক্রিয়াটা কিভাবে কাজ করেছে, এটা postmodern writerদের ironic reading থেকে এই জিনিসটা এক্সপ্লোর করা যায়। It's deemed subversive and they see that this creation of myth or giving the meaning to the people, goal to the people, I mean it is subversive, এটার পেছনে ধ্বংসাত্মক একটা ব্যাপার আছে, তারা এটাকে হিসেবে বিবেচনা, something which is dangerous. It is also why ironic uses of stereotypes are sometimes differentiated from their simple deployment, and why the play of signs in fields such as the internet or reader response models of global culture, where each user is aware they are appropriating and redeploying signs, is sometimes seen as progressive, even if the signs deployed are capitalist, conventional, racist, etc. So sometimes it's a reader response model. That means a reader response is important here. What does he feel after reading the particular text? Even and you are using the internet, and the reader response model is a global culture. That is a globally the global culture. That means the whole culture in the whole world, like Western culture or Asian culture, or you can say South Asian culture, or you can see the Middle Eastern culture. So I mean, all together this global culture. How actually you have the knowledge of it? Okay, so it's a why the play of science in the field such as the internet or reader response. Reader response. That means I am reading and I am responding to that particular text. That models of global culture, where each user is aware they're appropriating and deploying sound. So I know that I'm consuming some kind of science and I'm redeploying those signs. That means I'm using those signs again. Is sometimes seen, and this is seen, this is deemed as a progressive, even if the science deployed are capitalist, conventional, or racist. Even you see that that is a racist kind of myths, that's a racist kind of deployment of the science, and that's capitalist or racist or conventional, but we think that that is a kind of progression. আমরা সেটাকে উন্নতি হিসেবে দেখি, আমরা বিভিন্ন জিনিস নিচ্ছি, সেটাকে বোঝার চেষ্টা করছি, অ্যাপ্রোপ্রিয়েট করছি, মানে সেটাকে ইউজ করছি, ওটাকে আমি কনজিউম করছি, সেটাকে আবার রিডিপ্লয় করছি, ওটাকে আবার নতুন ভাবে আমরা এটাকে ব্যবহার করতেছি। এবং এই যে করাটা, এই যে অ্যাপ্রোপ্রিয়েটিং রিডিপ্লয়িং সায়েন্স, এই পুরো টেকনিকটাকে পোস্ট মডার্ন আর্নিক রিডিং অনুযায়ী এটা বলছে যে এটা একটা প্রোগ্রেসিভ, এটা একটা খুবই প্রগতিশীল একটা ধারণা। ইভেন ইফ দ্য সায়েন্স, যদিও এই সায়েন্সই বা এই সায়েন্সগুলো আমাদের কাছে যে এই সিগনিফিকেন্স তৈরি করছে, তারা যদি পুঁজিবাদও হয়, পুঁজিবাদীও হয়, ক্যাপিটালিস্টও যদি হয়, তারা যদি ট্র্যাডিশনালিস্টও যদি হয় বা কনভেনশনাল হয়, তারা যদি রেসিস্ট হয়, তাও সেটা এক ধরনের প্রোগ্রেশন। কারণ তুমি সেই মিথসের মধ্যে আরেক ধরনের মিথস তুমি খুঁজে বের করছো, রিডিপ্লয় করছো, সায়েন্সটাকে আবার নতুন করে ব্যবহার করছো। Barthes sees myths as a functioning in a similar way to Althusserian interpellation. It calls out to the person who receives it, like a command or a statement of fact. The content of the injunction is to identify the science with the essence. He will say, it calls out a person who receives it like a command. That means you're commanding something and I'm just write a command or a statement. I'm just consuming those facts. The content of the injunction, the content of the injunction is to identify the science with essence. So what will be the content of the injunction? That means something that has been imposed on you, or you have taken that thing, and your job will be to identify the science of the essence. So the science and the essence, the thing itself. So you will try to identify it. In fact, mythical science look as if they have been created on the spot for the viewer. It seems that it has been created on the spot, right at that moment for the viewer. It's a conscious process. They look like they're simply there to perform their role in the myth. That means those signs, those meanings, those mythical signs actually as if they have been created just to play their role there. The history which causes or creates them is rendered invisible. This is the thing. This is very interesting twist, you can say. That means there is a kind of conscious process, and some force, something, some agent, some actors, they created it. But the causes why that kind of signification that has been created, why that kind of myth has been created, that is rendered invisible. You cannot know the purpose, cause that is invisible. You can't understand them. You don't know them. You can find them. That is invisible, but it's there, as if on the spot it has been created. but actually it has been created very consciously, prior to that publication of particular image or the book. So so it says that myth is parasitical on language. That means on the language, it acts like a parasite. You know the parasite? পরাশ্রয়ী যে জীবাণু কিংবা গাছ, তুমি দেখেছো গাছের উপরে আরেক ধরনের গাছ থাকে যেটা অরিজিনাল গাছের উপরে ভর করে তার পরগাছা, যার উপরে সে শুষে নিয়ে তার কাছ থেকে সে তার জীবিকা সে নিয়ে বেঁচে থাকে।
এটার নামে একটা মুভি আছে প্যারাসাইট, অস্কার পেয়েছিল।
Exactly. So you see, myth is parasitical on language. So myth is actually, it's based on the language. It's not actually the language, but it's just like a parasite. এই পরাশ্রয়ীর মতো ভাষার উপরে ভর করে মিথ্যা বেঁচে থাকে। It requires the meaning of the initial sign for its power, but at the same time, it denies this specificity, making it seem indisputable and natural rather than contingent. So you see, it's very interesting. It requires the meaning of the initial signs for its power. So initially we have signs, we have signification. So it actually take this initial signs as its basic structure, but at the same time it denies this specificity. যে সাইনের উপর নির্ভর করে সেটা সিগনিফিকেশন তৈরি করছে, সেই সাইনকে যে পরবর্তীতে আমরা অস্বীকার করছি। Do you get the point what I'm saying? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, then what does it do? Time, it denies this specificity. So it denies the specificity of that sign, then make it seem indisputable. It says that you cannot challenge it. That is very natural. That myth, actually, it has grown out of that. The previous signs, based on the signs, already that those signs are existing. But on the basis of that signs, it has created a new kind of meaning of myth, and it is completely ignoring the existing signs and making its appearance. It's making it indisputable. You cannot have any debate about it. It's there. It's already there. I'm already there. So myth is parasitical on language. So যার উপর ভিত্তি করে সে গড়ে ওঠে সে তাকেই পরে অস্বীকার এবং সে বলে যে আমি তো আগে থেকে এখানে আছি, I'm there. আমাকে নিয়ে বিতর্কের কোনো অবকাশ নেই, indisputable rather than contingent. মানে তুমি এটা নিয়ে যে dispute করবে, it is not contingent. That means I'm there already. I'm pretty natural. My existence is very much natural. Okay. Understood?
Yes, sir.
So rather than dependent on the existing science or existing structure, it says that I'm already there. There is always a reminder of denotation without which the connotation could not exist. This is the thing. All the time, we must have some kind of denotation there. Without the denotative meaning, is it possible to imagine the connotative meaning? But myth says that my connotation is only mine. There is nothing denotation. There is nothing denotated. H2O means water, right?
Yes, sir.
Water means it's a kind of substance that quenches the thirst of enemies. পানি কি? এটা এক ধরনের লিকুইড যেটা কি করে, একটা তরল পদার্থ যেটা মানুষের তৃষ্ণা নিবারণ করে। আমি যদি বেসিক ডিনোটেটিভ মিনিং হিসেবে এটা ধরি, সায়েন্টিফিক মিনিং, ঠিক আছে? That's the denotative meaning, okay? Hello?
Yes, sir.
But beyond that denotative meaning, what does it mean? It signifies more than that. Water means life. But people who are living on the bank of the rivers, and if that river is very much, it's full of water, especially during the rainy days, monsoon season, water is abundant, and you can see the river erosion. নদী ভাঙন দেখতে পাই না আমরা?
Yes, sir.
তো নদী পাড়ের মানুষের কাছে পানি কি জীবন না মরণ?
Modern sir.
So you see,
Yes, sir.
the connotative meaning is different. Meaning changes. So first of all, there must be water, that is H2O, that is the denotative meaning. And then you can have all the other connotative meaning. Water means life, water means dangers, water means disaster, water means support, water means livelihood. So different people, they will have their connotative meaning in different ways. But the myth actually, it denies the existence of the denotative meaning. Got it?
Yes, sir.
It is only because of this remnant of denotation that the connotation can naturalize something. Since there is something denotative meaning, there is something denotative, that's why you can have the connotative. And that's actually, we can have this naturalization of the connotation. Without any base, without any foundation, you cannot naturalize the meaning. It's not possible. It is as if it needs the innocence of denotation to pose an innocence itself, to pose as innocent itself. So you need an innocent baseline, an innocent denotation, so that you can have an innocent connotation. So meaning is thus torn between nature and culture, denotation and connotation, right? So meaning is there. There is nature, there is culture, there is denotation, there is connotation. On the basis of all these, so meaning is torn between এগুলোর মাঝেই মিনিংটা সবসময় এর মধ্যেই যেন সে যুদ্ধরত অবস্থা আছে একটা প্রকৃতি একদিকে সংস্কৃতি একদিকে ডিনোটেশন একদিকে কনোটেশন এই সব কিছু মিলিয়েই মিনিংটাকে বেঁচে থাকতে হয় সার্ভাইভ করতে হয় It also has a tendency to empty language. It removes signs from their context, hiding the process of attaching signifier to signified, signifier and signified. It thus strips signs of the richness and the specificity that I have already mentioned, that the meaning itself, the myth itself, it tries to remove the meaning. It tries to empty the language. পরাশ্রয়ী গাছ কি করে, সে নিজে অন্য গাছের রস শুষে নিয়ে ওই গাছটাকে প্রায় মেরেই ফেলে না? এই জন্য কি করে, পরাশ্রয়ী জমিতে যখন এরকম পরাশ্রয়ী গাছ থাকে সেগুলোকে কেটে ফেলে না? আমরা কি বলি, উইড বলি সেগুলোকে, তাই না? সে উইড আউট করা, ওগুলোকে তখন এক্সটারমিনেট করতে হয়, বিভিন্ন ধরনের কীটনাশক ব্যবহার করে ওগুলোকে রিডিউস করতে, তাহলে মূল গাছ কিছু বেঁচে থাকতে দেয়, ওই গাছের সমস্ত পুষ্টি সে খেয়ে ফেলে। Do you get the point? What I'm saying? So it
Yes, sir.
has also a tendency to empty language. So it tries to kill the language itself, and it tries to exist as something which is very sovereign, but actually it's not. It does strip signs of the richness and the specificity. So signs, there's already existing signs. It tries to strip off their richness and specificity. It tries to kill its richness and specificity, its meaning. The function of myth is to empty reality of the appearance of history and of social construction. So this is the thing. Remember, what's the function of the myth? The function of the myth is to empty reality of the appearance of history. The history that you know, the appearance of the history that you know, the reality that you know, it tries to empty that. It tries to kill that. And of social construction, and also the social construction, it tries to destroy it, and it tries to establish a new one. The initial sign is rich in history. Rich in history. History is rich. Myth functions by depriving it of history and turning it into an empty form to carry a different meaning. So it tries to kill the existing history, existing meaning, and it tries to create a new meaning. It tries to make itself different. And in doing so, it tries to turn the existing richness of the meaning or the specificity of the science, it tries to turn it into an empty substance, empty form. If the political is taken to encompass all human relations, if the political is taken to encompass all human relations in their actual structure as power to transform the world, then myth is depoliticized speech. So it's the political means it encompasses all human relations. In the politics, we have all the human power relationships, right? Poor, rich, upper class, world class, middle class. So everybody is part of the politics, right? All of us, we are some sort of, in one way or another, we are part of the politics. Every status of the society is the part of the politics. All these structures are the part of the politics. As power to transform the world, and it tries to transform the world. But then myth is depoliticized speech, the active stripping of politics from speech. So it tries to separate the politics from the speech. So it tries to separate the language from the speech. So usage of doing is mistakenly portrayed as nature for being. This draining of history strips represented phenomena of their content. What is actually a contextually a specific action is taken to stand for something else, a timeless, eternal essence. This is termed the concept of the myth. Barthes expresses it by adding ness, that is conceptness, or ite onto ordinary words. So he will add like construct, the constructiveness, okay, the specificity. So he tries to make us understand that how actually myth actually it tries to separate the politics from the language, how actually it tries to separate the language from the history, how it tries to empty the language, and how it tries to, the myth itself, it tries to establish its own meaning, and how it tries to make it very natural, very innocent. This emptying is also a kind of feeling. This is very interesting. So when actually it's emptying the language, that means it's creating another language, right? When it is emptying one kind of science or signification, that means it's creating another kind of signification, right?
Yes, sir.
Myth is creating another language. Myth is creating another meaning. Killing one meaning, it is creating another meaning. So in a sense, it is another kind of feeling. আরেক ধরনের পরিপূর্ণ করে তোলা, একটাকে শেষ করেছে নতুন আরেকটা ক্রিয়েট করছে, আরেকটা মিনিং দাও করেছে, তাহলে এটাও এক হিসেবে আরেক ধরনের পূর্ণতা, ফিল করা, কোনো কিছুকে পরিপূর্ণ করে ফেলা। The concept carried by a myth appears to be eternal and absolute. In fact, the concept carried by a myth implies into the sign and entire history and perspective. It speaks to a very specific group of readers. It corresponds closely to its function. For instance, it refers back to a particular stereotypes embedded in gender, racial or class hierarchies. So you see, it is everywhere you can find the myths. In the race, in the gender, in the hierarchy, you can find it. Because it speaks to a very specific group of readers. So myth also, it speaks to a specific group of readers. And it corresponds closely to its function. So the function, what it wants to do, it wants to create a new meaning. So it's very close to its function. For instance, it refers back to particular stereotypes embedded in gender. So stereotyping. For example, why do you create myth? For example, sometimes we create myth to identify a specific race, or to stigmatize a specific race, to politicize a specific race. So we try to stereotype a group of people. For example, in USA, you can see there is a concept, there is a belief that, or a stereotyping that say that black people, most of the criminals, they are black, right? Black people, they're considered that most of them, they are involved with the criminal activities in American society. So these Negroes, they're blamed for most of the criminal activities in USA. You watched this kind of news on television, right? That white policemen, they're killing black people without any reason, and sometimes with a very flimsy pretext, they're killing people, arresting them, putting them behind the bars, right?
Yes, sir.
This is called a stereotyping, but you have to create a myth. What is that myth? Myth is black people, they're very prone, or they have the tendency to do the criminal activities. মানে কালো মানুষ হলেই তাদের জন্য ওই গন্ডগোল, ফাসাদ, কিংবা ওই ছিনতাই, রাহাজানি, হাইজ্যাকিং, কিংবা দোকানে লুণ্ঠন কাজ, এই যে ভ্যান্ডালিজম, এগুলো করার টেন্ডেন্সি কাদের বেশি? ব্ল্যাক পিপলদের। সুতরাং কিছু হলেই কেউ তোমার বাড়ির উঠোনের সামনে একটা ব্ল্যাক পিপল হয়তো সেমনি হেঁটে হেঁটে যাচ্ছে, তুমি সন্দেহ করে পুলিশকে ফোন দিলে যে আমার উঠোনের সামনে এক ব্ল্যাক পিপল হেঁটে হেঁটে যাচ্ছে, এ নিগার ইজ ওয়াকিং অ্যারাউন্ড এন্ড হি ইজ হিয়ার, সে অনেকক্ষণ ধরে দাঁড়িয়ে এদিক ওদিক তাকাচ্ছে, সে হয়তো কারোর জন্য অপেক্ষা করছে, ওইখানে সে হয়তো দাঁড়াতে বলছে, কিন্তু ওর বাসার সামনে তুমি হোয়াইট, পুলিশকে ফোন দিলে পুলিশ আসলে তাকে অ্যারেস্ট করে নিয়ে চলে উইদাউট এনি রিজন। তুমি সন্দেহ করে ফোন দিয়েছো যে আই ফিল থ্রেটেন্ড, দেয়ার ইজ এ ব্ল্যাক পারসন, এ নিগার, হি ইজ জাস্ট স্ট্যান্ডিং ইন ফ্রন্ট অফ মাই হাউস, and for last 2 or 3 minutes he's been here, so I feel threatened, please come and rescue me. এই যেরকম হয় না, দেখছো না নিউজে, দেখো এগুলো যে পুলিশরা মেরে ফেলছে, অমুককে মেরেছে, এ নিয়ে অনেক আন্দোলন হচ্ছে। তোমরা টেলিভিশনে দেখো তো এগুলো, না কিছুই জানো না? দেখো
জি স্যার।
এই যে স্টিরিওটাইপিং, এটার জন্য একটা মিথ ক্রিয়েট করতে হয়েছে তোমাকে, যে ব্ল্যাক পিপল খারাপ, এর পিছনে তো অর্থ দাঁড় করাতে হচ্ছে। এটা একটা কনস্ট্রাক্ট না? So you need to work on it. So that's the thing. Okay. Now let me skip. Now here you see. From here. Now, as a result of myth, people are constantly plunged into a false nature, which is actually a constructed system. That already I have mentioned it. And if you watch the, English movies, you can see in the English movies all the time, you can see the, bad people, most of them, they're black, right? You can see the black people, most of them, the bad people, criminals, they are black. So you can see they have established, it's a constructed system. So what happens that as a result of myth, people like us constantly plunge into a false nature, which is actually a constructed system. So we are deceived by it. we feel that, okay, this is the right picture, this is the right thing. We believed in it, but it's a kind of false nature, and we plunged into it. আমরা এর মধ্যে নিমজ্জিত হয়ে যাই, ডুবে যাই, মানে আমরা ধরাশায়ী হয়ে যাই এর কাছে, বুঝতে পারি না, আমরা ইনোসেন্সটাকে ধরতে পারি না। ওর একটা ইনোসেন্ট একটা লুক আছে, হ্যাঁ ব্ল্যাক পিপল মানে খারাপ, দেখুন ইংলিশ সবসময় দেখায়, তার মানে আসলে মনে ওরা খারাপ আমেরিকাতে, তাহলে এরকম দেখাচ্ছে কেন? বুঝতে পারছো আমরা কোথায়, কোনটা দিয়ে আমরা ধরা খাচ্ছি, কিভাবে আমরা এর মধ্যে আটকে যাচ্ছি জালে, এই কনস্ট্রাক্টেড সিস্টেমের মধ্যে ধরা পড়ে যাচ্ছে। বুঝতে পারছো? হ্যালো, do you get it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fantastic. Now, here is a semiotic analysis of myth is a political act establishing the freedom of language from the present system and unveiling the constructiveness of social realities. So what is semiotic analysis? What does it do? Semiotic analysis of myth? Semiotic analysis of myth is a political act. Remember, it's a political act establishing the freedom of language from the present system. The present system actually, it has a stereotyped group of people. It has created some kind of myths, and we have got some kind of negative notions about particular group of people or particular system. And semiotic analysis of myth actually, it's trying to explore it. It tries to, break all these kind of negative notions. Thus, it says that freedom of language, it tries to establish kind of freedom of language, the language that through which actually we understand a particular society, particular culture, tradition, particular myth. It tries to divulge it. It tries to, explore it, break it down, and then it tries to give us a real picture, the reality, the social reality. So it's unveiling the constructed of the social reality. So we have some kind of social realities, and through some process it has been created, and we believe in it. And then this kind of semiotic analysis of the myth, it tries to give us the real picture of the society, the realities, unveil, এটা উন্মুক্ত করার চেষ্টা করে, এটাকে সে খুলে দেয়, আমাদের সামনে সে তুলে ধরার চেষ্টা করে। The contingent, historical, socially constructed capitalist system comes to seem as life, the world, the way it is. So you see, we see that the world, the way it is, this is a capitalist society. এটা তো এইভাবেই হবে, এটা তো হবারই, এরকমই ছিল। So আমরা এটাকে মেনেই নিই, ধরে নিই, এটা একটা ক্যাপিটালিস্ট কনস্ট্রাক্ট আমাদের সামনে দেয়া হচ্ছে, কিন্তু এইটাকে ভাঙার চেষ্টা করে semiotic analysis of myth. One way to become aware of myths is to consider how they would see from the standpoint of whatever they represent. Myth is always clear when seen from the standpoint of the signifier which has been robbed. For instance, the mythical nature of the use of the image of the black soldier is apparent if the soldier's actual narrative is known or confident. So if you try to understand the real picture of the soldier, if you have a cultural knowledge about his present situation, his real situation, then the whole thing, that is standpoint actually, it will help you to understand the real myth. It will help you to understand the reality, because that reality has been robbed in the creation of that kind of myth. So this semiotic analysis of myth, that will help you to understand the real picture, the reality. Another aspect of the functioning of myth is that it refuses the explanatory or analytical level. This is the myth. It doesn't accept any kind of explanation or analysis. You just have to accept it, embrace it. There is a myth. You don't have to explore it. You don't have to go for the analysis. No explanation. Just embrace it. Just accept it. It states facts and posits values, but it doesn't use theories to explain social phenomena. So myth will establish some kind of facts. It will establish some kind of values, but it will not give you any theories to explain the social phenomena. So you witness social phenomena, different kinds of situations, circumstances in the society, but it will not equip you with the theories to understand it, to explore it. You just have to accept it. This is the value. This is the fact. That's facts are taken as self-present. That means fact is already there. It's self-evident. You cannot deny it. You cannot challenge it. Not as mysteries to be explained. For example, mysteries sometimes in the society are different kinds of ghostly stuff is there, and they're very mysterious. They're very supernatural. We just accept it. We don't go for the explanation. Just like that. You just embrace the myth. Don't go for the explanation. You cannot go. But the semiotic analysis of myth will help us to break this taboo, to understand the language beyond the myth. The statement of facts or values without explaining them gives an illusory clarity, making it seem that they're obvious. They go without saying. So when you don't challenge it, when you don't try to understand it with the use of theories, if you don't try to destructure it, or if you don't try to restructure it, reevaluate it, then what will happen that you will take it as it is, but it will give you some kind of illusory clarity, একটা মোহময় স্পষ্টতা দেবে। তুমি এটা না পারবে এটা এক্সপ্লেন করতে, না পারবে এটা থেকে বেরিয়ে যেতে। বুঝতে পারছো কি বলছি? হ্যালো?
Ji sir.
Yes, sir.
For example, in our society, it's the concept of beauty. That means if you have white complexion, long hair, I mean, especially for the girls, and beautiful eyes, you have a perfect height, that is the beauty. But nobody cares about the real beauty in a person. So it's a kind of illusory clarity. Okay, then make it seem that they are obvious. And the myth, it will create such kind of phenomena that you will feel that this is the reality, this is obvious. I cannot escape it. I cannot escape it. This is the obvious reality. And they go without saying. And we just embrace them. We just accept them without challenging it, without saying anything about it. Now, Barthes lists 7 common techniques or figures of myth. There are 7 common techniques or figures of myth, 7 techniques. One is inoculation, admitting a little bit of evil in an institution so as to ward off awareness of its fundamental problems. Now, I think we don't have enough time, right? Do we have?
Yes sir.
Okay,
No,
it's
sir.
already, yeah, it's more than 2 hours. So what can we do? I will discuss these common techniques or figures of myths in the next class. Okay.
Okay sir.
And I will share these slides with you today.
Okay, sir.
What you can do, you can read some of the chapters from the Mythologies. Okay, now I will mention the names from his books, Mythologies, Ronald Barthes, and the text that actually we are going to focus on primarily. One is the Writer on Holiday, the Writer on Holiday, and another one is Blind and Dumb Criticism, Blind and Dumb Criticism, and another one is Soap Powders and Detergents, Soap Powders and Detergents. We'll also be reading The Poor and the Proletariat, The Poor and the Proletariat, Toys, Toys, and also we will read Steak and Chips, Steak and Chips, and then Ornamental Cookery, Ornamental Cookery. That's the last one. So from his book, Mythologies, these are the first group of essays, or you can say different chapters. So from all these essays, actually, I have chosen these essays for you, and these will help us to understand it, okay?
Okay sir.
So I believe that today's discussion that will help you to understand this text. And I'm also going to send you the names of these texts that I've already mentioned in your messenger group or even in Google Classroom. So from there, you can get the names and please read this. So next week, I'm going to ask you that whatever actually you have read from all these selected essays and how actually you can explore this idea of myths and mythologies from theirs, and how can you get the meaning, the real meaning. So we'll try to decipher the myths and its functioning, how actually it's working, creating myths, how people are, getting deceived by this kind of myths. Okay, so we'll do some semiotic analysis of the myths in the next class, and we'll also read some of the text from these selected essays. Got it, dear students?
Yes sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much for your patience, and hope to see you next week with a new topic and new ideas. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Assalamu
Assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum, sir.
Welcome. Welcome.